Let's talk about a number, $10,000. For a lot of us, that number feels like, well, like an impossible mountain to climb. But what if I told you that the money itself is actually the least important part of this whole equation?
And that is the core idea we're going to unpack today. You see, getting to that first 10 grand, it's not really a financial challenge, it's a psychological one. It's a test of who you are, and maybe even more importantly, who you're deciding to become.
All right, so let's dive right into this. Why is this specific goal so incredibly hard? It kind of feels like financial quicksand, doesn't it? You know, you take a couple steps forward, and then, boom, you slide right back where you started.
I mean, we've all been there, right? Staring at our bank accounts, wondering, why isn't the needle moving? Even though we have the best intentions. We think, oh, I just need a bigger shovel, a higher income. But somehow, the hole just keeps getting deeper.
So here's the truth of it. You don't need a more complicated spreadsheet. You don't need a fancier budgeting app. The problem isn't the numbers. The real issue is with the unconscious rules and behaviors that are running your life completely on autopilot.
The author Ramit Sethi has a great name for these. He calls them invisible money scripts, and they're exactly what they sound like. These quiet little stories you tell yourself, often without even realizing you're doing it. Things like, oh, rich people are greedy, or you gotta spend money to make money, or maybe one you grew up with, we don't talk about money in this family. These scripts are running in the background, and they're sabotaging your decisions before you can even make them. That's the real reason the math never seems to add up.
And this just brilliantly ties into what James Clear talks about in his work. He says, your bank account is simply a lagging measure of your financial habits. Think about that. If your habit is to spend impulsively or to just save whatever's left over at the end of the month, well, your results are going to be the same, always. Without a conscious system in place, your unconscious scripts, they win. Every single time.
So, okay, if the problem is all this unconscious behavior, then the solution has to be a conscious shift in who you are. This isn't about just trying harder. It's about actually becoming someone different.
And here you can really see the crucial difference between setting a goal and building an identity. A goal, that's just a target you hit. And then what? Usually the motivation fades, right? But an identity, that's who you are. When you decide, you know what, I am the type of person who saves and invests, your actions just start to line up at that belief, almost automatically. The decision's already been made for you.
Okay, so how do you actually do this? Well, it's a pretty simple three-step process. First, you decide. Not what you want, but who you want to be. Then you have to prove it to yourself. And listen, not with some giant leap. You prove it with tiny, almost insignificant actions. Save $5. Transfer $20 into an investment account. Every single one of those actions is like a vote for your new identity.
And that right there is the crucial point. The goal is not to save $1,000 in one day. It's to become the kind of person who saves something, anything, consistently. It's all about building that muscle. Mastering the simple habit of showing up for your future self, that's what builds an identity that actually lasts.
And once you make that psychological shift, well, something pretty incredible starts to happen. You unlock what is probably the most powerful force in all of finance.
This number, $10,000. You know, once you finally hit it, its meaning completely changes. It stops being this finish line you were desperately trying to cross, and instead, it becomes the starting line.
It becomes the fuel for your wealth engine. It's that seed capital that finally starts working for you, instead of you always working for it.
Just look at this. Let's assume a pretty average 8% return. That first $10,000, even if you don't add another penny to it, it doubles in about 10 years. Fast forward 30 years, and it's become over $100,000. That is the magic of compounding. Your money starts earning its own money, and it creates this snowball effect that can only really begin once you have that initial foundation to build on.
This is such a key insight, you guys. You don't wait until you're rich to figure out how to handle money. No, you build the habits now while the stakes are still pretty low. I mean, the systems you create to save your first 10 grand are the exact same systems that will manage your first 100 grand and eventually your first million.
So what does that system actually look like? Well, it's way simpler than you probably think. It's not about deprivation, it's not about complexity, it's about one word: automation.
The plan is really straightforward. First, you get control over where your money is going. You consciously cut costs on things you don't really love, and that frees up cash for what you do. Second, you focus on increasing your income. But that third step, that's the secret weapon.
You automate your investing, so the whole thing happens without you even having to think about it.
I mean, this just perfectly captures the whole idea of building wealth while you sleep. You set up automatic transfers from your checking to your savings and investment accounts for the day you get paid. The work is done just once, right up front, and then the system just runs itself. This takes emotion, willpower, and just plain forgetfulness completely out of the equation.
And maybe the most important thing here is to avoid what they call analysis paralysis. Spending endless hours researching the absolute perfect fund or the perfect strategy. Ramit Sethi calls this the 85% solution. It is so much better to get it 85% right and just start now than to wait for 100% certainty and end up doing nothing. Action beats perfection every single time. Which brings us to, I think, the most important takeaway from this whole thing. We started this conversation with identity, and that's exactly where we're going to end it. Because that number in your bank account, it's just a reflection of the person you've become. It's the evidence of your discipline, your systems, your new identity. The money is just the result. It's not the cause.
So what's the actual prize for all this work? Is it really just about watching that number finally tick past 10,000? No. The real prize is the person you had to become to get there. Someone who is confident, disciplined, forward-thinking. Someone who is finally in control of their own life. That transformation, that's the true wealth. And believe me, it's worth infinitely more than $10,000.